Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping on our linguistic black ties, so to speak.
We are.
We're entering a world where nuance isn't just, appreciated. It is absolutely required.
Yes, this is high-stakes stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are moving well beyond just simple conversational fluency in a language and aiming for true mastery in what has to be one of the most socially complex environments there is.
The sophisticated restaurant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sophisticated dining.
That's absolutely right. When most people talk about achieving fluency, they're thinking about something pretty basic.
Right. Can I get by?
Can I get by? Can I handle, a basic transaction, order a coffee, ask for directions, maybe some small talk?
Sure.
But C2 level mastery, that real confidence, it's revealed in a completely different setting, not in a classroom.
No.
It's when you have to navigate these complex social and cultural rituals, like a formal dinner in a high-end restaurant.
And it's so much more than vocabulary, isn't it?
Oh, it's miles beyond that. It's about internalizing the cultural expectations and understanding the whole register of speech that's necessary.
What does that signal to them?
It signals respect, knowledge, and just a general command of the situation.
And that's exactly what we're tackling in this deep dive. Our mission today is to give you that shortcut.
A cheat sheet, almost.
A cheat sheet, exactly, into the culinary lexicon and the proper etiquette that instantly shifts you from sounding like, a well-meaning tourist to a really discerning patron.
We're going to be dissecting the language required from the very first moment you step across the threshold.
All the way to signing the final bill.
All the way. We've put together some source material that really outlines these specific linguistic structures, the vocabulary you need to signal this mastery.
And it's about the subtle shifts, right?
It is entirely about the subtle shifts in language that separate someone who knows the language.
From someone who knows how to use it.
Exactly. How to use it within a very formal context. So we'll look at everything from, the art of a polite request to customizing an order to even handling a complaint with grace.
I find this so fascinating because it really proves that language mastery is completely contextual.
It is.
The words you'd use to talk to a food truck vendor are just worlds apart from how you'd address a sommelier.
A different planet.
So let's unpack this. We're starting right at the beginning, at that very first interaction, and we're going to follow the linguistic journey all the way through to the end.
Yeah.
So the moment you approach the entrance of a high-end place, the whole game changes.
Immediately.
The language you use right there in that first interaction, it really sets the tone for the entire meal.
It does. It immediately communicates your comfort level or your discomfort in that environment. It starts the second you go from just, opening the door to actually approaching the person in charge.
And that is such a crucial distinction.
It really is. In a casual place, you might just, find a booth or wait in a line.
Right.
Here, you're seeking permission. You're seeking guidance. And that person in charge, that might be a host or hostess, or in the most formal settings, the maitre d'.
Which means what? Master of the house.
Master of the house, essentially. You're approaching the host stand, and the language has to immediately reflect that formality. It's a professional interaction, and politeness is it's paramount.
And, of course, in sophisticated dining, planning ahead is the norm. So let's start with the reservation protocol.
Yes.
If you've booked ahead, which you probably should have, your approach needs to be incredibly precise, concise, and just confident.
You're establishing your identity and the terms of your visit right away. It shows you respect their system, their time management.
It's like a verbal handshake, isn't it?
It is a verbal handshake.
Sure.
You're communicating efficiently while sticking to a polite, structured format. You give them 3 key pieces of information immediately.
And you avoid all that awkwardness.
You avoid all that fumbling. If you were too casual and just said, "Hi, I'm here for dinner," the host then has to start this interrogation.
What name? What time? How many people?
Exactly. You just remove all of that friction by using the formal greeting and giving them the critical details straight away.
And the source material gave us what is, I think, the perfect formula for this. The linguistic gold standard.
That's so clean.
Good evening. I have a reservation under the name Smith for 7:00 p.m. It's perfect. Clean, comprehensive. It's got the time, the name, the intention.
And that clarity is a huge marker of C2 mastery. It shows you understand how the place works, The
workflow.
The workflow, yes. The host is juggling the entire dining room, and your precision helps them seat you efficiently right on schedule. It's a very functional piece of language that just screams confidence.
But life happens.
It does.
Maybe you find yourself unexpectedly in the neighborhood or a meeting ran late. So what happens if you're the spontaneous visitor? What about handling the walk-in scenario?
Okay, so first, let's be really clear on the definition. A walk-in is just any party that arrives without booking ahead.
And that fundamentally changes the whole approach.
Yeah, completely. You're no longer confirming something they already know. You are implicitly asking the restaurant to accommodate you outside of their plan.
You're asking them to potentially disrupt their whole evening.
You are. You're asking for a favor. And so the language has to shift immediately toward, extreme politeness. You need every linguistic softening technique you can find.
You absolutely cannot just demand a table.
Never. And this is where that essential vocabulary comes in. The phrase that we just have to prioritize here is availability.
Right. So asking, do you happen to have any availability for a party of two?
That is a quantum leap linguistically beyond asking, do you have an open table?
That's a fantastic point. But let's dig into that. Why is availability so much better?
Well, because the word availability respects the fact that they are managing this incredibly complex system.
It's not just chairs and tables.
It's not just furniture. It's reservations, it's table turns, it's server sections. It suggests that you understand their seating chart isn't just a physical layout, but a meticulously managed schedule.
So you're asking about a possibility within their operational constraints.
Precisely. An open table sounds like you're just looking at an empty physical object. Availability acknowledges the entire operational complexity behind the scenes.
I see. It's deferential to their professionalism. And, okay, so if the host says they might have something, but there could be a wait,
Then the advanced learner signals flexibility.
you show you're willing to adjust your plans to fit their reality.
Exactly. Following up with something like, is there a long wait for a table? Further cements that sophisticated approach. It shows patience, it shows flexibility.
Which are huge cultural expectations in this setting.
Huge. A true C2 patron respects that boundary between what the customer wants and what the staff can operationally provide.
So the big takeaway for Arrival is this. Replace any abrupt statements with formal, inquiry-based structures.
Whether you're confirming a booking or seeking that spontaneous availability.
Precision and politeness. Those are your weapons of choice.
All right, so you've successfully been seated. Now the linguistic focus shifts right away to the menu.
And to that first interaction with your server, which usually revolves around beverages.
Yes, this is what we call the critical soft start to the dining experience.
And this first order, it lets both of you establish a rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Before you get into the big commitment of the food order.
It does. And here again, we have to stress the importance of avoiding that demanding tone, especially for something as basic as water.
Right. Saying, I want water is just, it's jarring.
It's a command. And in a formal setting, every single interaction should be framed as a polite request, even when you're ordering necessities. So we use softeners immediately.
The example from our source material is really good for this. It was, could we start with a bottle of sparkling water for the table, please?
Okay, let's break that down. 3 things are working there.
Go ahead.
First, the use of the modal verb could. That transforms the request into a gentle inquiry about possibility, not a direct order.
It's a question, not a statement.
Exactly. Second, we start with, that implies you're prioritizing this request, over the main order. You're acknowledging the sequence of service.
I see.
And third, the final please, which is, of course, the universal, non-negotiable softening agent. It's an efficient and very courteous structure.
And then there's that essential distinction, which a lot of newer learners overlook, the specific choice of water type.
You have to be clear. You need to distinguish between sparkling or still.
And this isn't just about preference. It's a quick decision that shows you're a seasoned diner. You understand the standard options.
And you avoid the server having to ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
You're making their job easier.
Right. Moving on to the main event, the menu itself. Sophisticated dining uses a much more elevated set of terms.
It does, and a C2 learner needs to be comfortable with this higher level vocabulary. We have to move beyond simple concepts like starters and main courses.
And that's where we get into the classical, sometimes confusing terminology. We need to know that starters can be called appetizers, or in a really French or high-end place, hors d'oeuvre.
And just using the term hors d'oeuvres instantly elevates the register. It signals you're familiar with that traditional culinary lexicon.
But here's where we need to get into the weeds a bit, with the term entree.
Ah, yes. The great transatlantic confusion.
This causes so much trouble globally. A master has to understand why. What many people, especially in North America, know as the main course is often called the entree.
It is, but this is where the historical context is so important.
Tell us.
In classical French cooking and on many European menus today, the entree is actually a course that comes before the main dish.
It means the entrance, right, to the meal.
Precisely, it's the entrance. So how does a C2 learner navigate this geographical linguistic minefield?
The knowledge itself is the key.
The knowledge itself is the marker of mastery. By knowing about this historical divergence, you know exactly when and why to use the term.
So in the U.S.,
In the vast majority of high-end places in the United States, entree means the main dish. Using it confidently in that context signals you're fluent in the local culinary idiom.
but if I'm in Paris,
If you're dining in Paris and you see entree on the menu, you know you're ordering a starter, and you adjust your conversation accordingly. The confident C2 speaker knows which meaning applies based on the location and the style of the establishment.
that is fantastic depth.
Yeah.
It moves beyond just memorizing a word into applied cultural knowledge.
It does.
Okay, speaking of application, let's talk about where the menu completely fails us. Managing the specials. The listening test.
Oh, the specials are so important. They are often the freshest, most seasonal, or most complex dishes that the chef is really excited about.
And crucially, they are almost never written down on the menu.
They rely entirely on the server's verbal delivery.
And that's exactly what makes it a great listening test, as the source puts it. The server recites them, often very quickly, using highly descriptive language.
And often very complex language. We're talking about processing terms like confit, sous vide, or reduction,
Descriptions with multiple components, different preparation methods.
all delivered at conversational speed. If you miss a detail, or if the term is new to you, you can't just glance back at the menu later.
It's a real-time assessment of your comprehension. If your mind wanders for a second, or if the restaurant is loud.
You risk missing the best dish of the night.
And if you have missed it, the worst thing to do is pretend you heard it and just order blindly.
Or, even worse, ask the server to repeat the whole list in an annoyed tone. That's a huge breakdown of that sophisticated register.
So you need a polite recovery phrase.
You absolutely do. You need to acknowledge the flow of service, but indicate that you need some clarity.
So you could say something like,
You could say, that all sounds fascinating. Could you run through the specials one more time? I wanted to make sure I caught the detail on the veal preparation.
So by being specific, asking about the veal, you show you are actually trying to listen.
Exactly. It frames the request as a necessity for accurate ordering, not just that you weren't paying attention.
Or even simpler, maybe, could you run through the specials again? I was so engrossed in the wine list, I'm afraid I missed the end.
A little self-deprecating humor or a simple excuse works wonders. The key is that you're using refined language to manage the flow of information.
Right. You're showing courteous respect for the server's time, but you're also making sure you have all the facts to make a perfect decision. All right, so we've navigated the menu. Now it's time to actually communicate our choices.
And this is where C2 level grammar really separates the beginner from the master. It is all about establishing your intent without ever sounding like you're giving an order.
The primary rule here has to be just carved in stone. The rule against bluntness.
It cannot be overstated. I want is a declarative statement of need. It's suitable for a toddler, maybe a drive-through.
But, as the source said, far too blunt for a C2 learner in this context.
It just suggests immediate command, and it disrespects the whole cooperative nature of fine dining service.
So we have to completely replace those declarative statements with structures that frame the order as a selection.
A preference or a choice. It's about conversational finesse.
So let's detail the polite ordering structures we need.
Okay, first up, we have I'll go with, which has this subtle implication of deliberation.
For instance, I think I'll go with the salmon.
If that's all right. Adding I think or if that's all right just softens it even more. It turns a decision into a provisional choice. It's very common because it sounds easygoing, not at all aggressive.
It makes you sound contemplative, not demanding.
Ah.
Okay, the second option is great for people who actually appreciate the server's input.
Yes, I'm torn between, this is a masterful phrase because it actively invites the server to offer their input and it validates their expertise.
Like, I'm torn between the lamb entree and the pan-seared sea bass special. Which would you recommend tonight?
Exactly. And even if you already knew you wanted the sea base, asking this frames the order as a collaborative decision. It shows immense respect for their role.
And then there's the classic, the one that works in pretty much any formal setting anywhere in the world.
The classic. I would like...
Why does this one work so well?
I would like uses the conditional tense, which automatically makes it less direct than I want. I would like the steak, medium rare. It's firm, it's clear, and it's perfectly polite.
So a true C2 learner should probably cycle through these.
I think so. I'll go for a more relaxed setting, I would like, for the most formal. The choice of structure is an aesthetic one, as much as it is a linguistic one.
But sophisticated dining isn't always about taking the menu item exactly as printed.
Almost never.
Patrons have specific needs, preferences, which means we need the vocabulary for precise modification. In short, customization.
This is a huge area of C2 mastery because it shows you can control your experience without being a nuisance.
And this brings us to that crucial phrase, on the side.
So important.
Why is on the side so vital for an advanced diner?
Because it lets you control the presentation and, more importantly, the texture of the dish. It prevents things like a sauce from completely overwhelming a delicate piece of fish.
Or preventing your fries from getting soggy.
Nobody wants soggy fries. For example, the source material gives us the structure, but could I have the sauce on the side? This means the diner controls the amount of sauce. It's a small request that makes a massive difference to the individual dining experience.
It communicates that you know exactly what you want and how you want it. It speaks to a refined palate.
It does. And then there's the concept of a substitute.
Right.
A substitution request shows you understand the structure of the plate, that the kitchen often thinks in terms of a protein, a starch, and a vegetable.
So when you ask to substitute, you're usually asking to swap one element for another of similar value.
Yes, similar cost or preparation time, which minimizes the burden on the kitchen. So instead of just demanding a side of vegetables when it isn't offered.
You use the conditional and the verb substitute.
Precisely. Could I substitute the fries for a side salad? You have the polite modal verb. Could you identify what you don't want the fries? And you propose a viable alternative. The salad.
It's a respectful negotiation.
It is. A C2 learner knows that just asking for extra things adds cost and complexity. Asking to substitute shows sensitivity to the kitchen's model. These small grammatical tweaks, using I would like, requesting items on the side, politely asking to substitute, these are the hallmarks of a confident patron.
Okay, now let's elevate the complexity again. We're moving from general preference to communicating essential health needs.
Addressing dietary restrictions.
This requires an even higher level of clarity and politeness.
Yeah.
You're communicating information that's necessary for safety.
Absolutely. In this section, the necessity of explicitness and politeness is it's paramount. The language must leave zero room for ambiguity about how severe your need is.
But you still have to maintain that respectful register we've been building.
It's a life-or-death communication in some cases that has to be treated with the utmost professionalism.
So let's detail the structure for explicit allergy communication. This isn't just listing an ingredient you don't like.
No. It's a clear statement of a medical condition and then politely delegating the responsibility to the staff.
The structure from the source material is really the gold standard for this.
It is. I have a severe allergy to peanuts. Could you please ensure the chef is aware?
Let's break that down. You use the phrase severe allergy.
Yes, not just I don't like peanuts. And the phrase, could you please ensure? Clearly and politely delegates that responsibility to the server and the kitchen. You're asking them to follow their internal safety protocol.
It ensures the issue is taken seriously. And for more general limitations.
For general limitations, like being vegan or gluten-free, the inquiry is often phrased as a question that seeks their input, not a demand for service.
So something like, are there any dairy-free options you would recommend?
Exactly. And that leads us right into the power of asking for a recommendation.
This is where that verb, recommend, really shines as a tool for the advanced diner.
It's so powerful. By asking, what do you recommend? You are elevating the server from a simple order taker to an essential guide for your entire experience.
And this isn't just flattery, is it?
Not at all. In a sophisticated restaurant, the servers are typically highly trained. They've tasted the dishes. They know what the chef is most proud of that night. They know the seasonality.
So asking for a recommendation validates their expertise.
It does, and it often leads you to a dish you wouldn't have considered otherwise. The language shifts from being transactional to being relational.
There was a beautiful demonstration of this in the role play we looked at. The patron asked about the catch of the day instead of just picking something.
And the server's response was incredible. Not just the name of the dish, but this detailed, positive description.
Right. They identified it as pan-seared sea bass, served over a bed of saffron risotto, and described it as truly exquisite.
That level of enthusiasm, that detail, That's what you unlock when you use the verb recommend. The server feels valued, and they return that value by giving you personalized, high-quality information.
However, the journey for a C2 learner doesn't just stop with a positive recommendation, especially when health is on the line.
No, it doesn't. True advanced fluency includes verification and follow-up. Trust, but verify.
You can't just take a general description as the final word if you have an intolerance or an allergy.
This is a critical step. It demonstrates advanced confidence, clarity, and self-advocacy. The example we examined involved a slight intolerance to shellfish.
And a need to verify a common, often hidden ingredient in the side dish.
The risotto stock.
An amateur diner might worry about offending the kitchen by questioning their ingredients.
A master knows that asking a precise, well-informed follow-up question is just a necessary part of the process.
So the exchange here is vital. The patron asked, I do have a slight intolerance to shellfish. Does the risotto contain any stock I should be worried about?
That is a brilliant question because it is so specific. They didn't just ask if the dish had shellfish. They asked about the stock, a nuanced base ingredient where shellfish or fish products often hide.
And the server's response just reflected the professionalism of the whole establishment.
It did. Good question. Let me double check with the chef, but I believe it uses a vegetable stock. I will verify that to be absolutely certain.
That entire exchange just encapsulates mastery.
It does. The patron is clear, asks a precise follow-up about a hidden ingredient, and the server acknowledges the importance of verification. It's a smooth, highly efficient, and health-conscious conversation that only an advanced diner would confidently initiate. So, the order is placed, the food has arrived, and now the server will inevitably perform a mid-meal check.
This is your designated chance to offer feedback, whether it's high praise or, occasionally a diplomatic critique.
And if the food is excellent, this is the moment for positive feedback. Adjective power.
We need to move beyond just a simple, it's good.
It's good suggests adequate competence.
Yeah.
We are aiming for appreciation that matches the sophistication of the dish itself.
The standard server prompt is usually something like, how is everything tasting?
And your response should use some high-level adjectives to really convey genuine appreciation. The source material had a fantastic list of words that elevate the praise.
Like exquisite, divine, succulent, perfectly seasoned.
Yes. To call a braised short rib succulent or a dessert divine immediately signals that you're an appreciative, discerning diner. You understand and you value the complex preparation.
It reflects the quality of the meal back at the kitchen in a vocabulary they understand and appreciate.
But as much as we strive for perfection, not every dining experience is flawless.
And the ultimate test of C2 fluency in this social context is how you handle a problem.
How you address a flawed preparation without being confrontational, this is handling issues with diplomacy.
And this requires a specific protocol. If you need assistance, you quietly catch the server's eye, no shouting.
Oh, absolutely not. That nonverbal signal, a slight raised hand or a gentle nod rather than calling out across the room, is a massive marker of respect for the dining environment.
And for the privacy of the other patrons.
Yes. Once you have their attention, you must immediately deploy linguistic softening mechanisms. These are designed to apologize for the interruption and gently introduce the issue.
Framing it as an unfortunate mistake rather than a catastrophic failure.
Let's analyze the necessary language using that classic example, an undercooked steak. You start by almost taking the blame for the complaint itself.
You start with an apology or acknowledgement.
Excuse me, I'm terribly sorry, but this acknowledges you're interrupting their service flow. It frames the issue as an unfortunate necessity, not an attack.
Then you state the issue softly. You don't just say, my steak is raw.
No, you use qualifiers. You state it softly. This steak is a bit rare for my taste.
A bit rare. That's much softer.
It's a statement of preference regarding the degree of cooking, not an accusation of incompetence.
And this leads to the critical conclusion, the final phrase that ensures a smooth resolution.
The request has to be framed as a question. You transfer the agency to the server and the kitchen.
The key softening question here is, would it be possible to have it thrown back on the grill for a moment?
That phrase, would it be possible, is the linchpin of diplomatic complaint. It avoids the demanding sound of, take this back and fix it.
It asks about feasibility. It shows deference.
Right. When you ask, would it be possible, you're essentially saying, I understand you are busy, and if this causes a massive disruption, I'll reconsider, but is it operationally viable to fix this?
It is a masterclass in linguistic conflict resolution.
It is. It allows the server to manage the situation gracefully. You get the outcome you want, a properly cooked steak, while maintaining that formal, respectful register.
The goal is always resolution with dignity preserved for everyone involved. So we've navigated every linguistic hurdle of the meal itself, we've eaten, we've enjoyed it, and now we reach the final sensitive phase.
The financial transaction.
This section demands absolute clarity on payment terminology and, of course, the cultural expectations around tipping, which can vary so much.
We have to immediately address the terminology differences based on geography. This is such a common point of confusion for international travelers.
It is. So in the U.S., the final itemized statement is called the check.
But if you are in the UK, or many Commonwealth countries, it is uniformly known as the bill.
Just knowing which term to use instantly demonstrates local fluency, and it prevents that tiny moment of confusion.
It does. And when it's time to ask for that statement, the request must again be structured to indicate patience and respect for the server's ongoing duties. This is requesting the tab, indicating no rush.
And this is a subtle but really profound cultural signal.
It is. In high-end dining, you want to show that you're not rushing them out the door.
Right. You're not treating them like a quick service employee whose only job is to get you the food and then the final bill.
So the polite request has to be conditional. Saying, check please, is functional, but it's abrupt.
The C2 level phrasing is, could we get the check when you have a moment?
That phrase is a linguistic work of art in this context. It implies the server is busy, that you respect their time management, and that your request is secondary to any immediate needs of other tables.
It acknowledges the service hierarchy. You're ready to leave, but you're not demanding immediate attention.
Which signals you value the quality of the service over pure speed.
Okay, and then comes the calculation of the final cost, which brings us to the gratuity discussion.
We need to define tip or gratuity and critically discuss whether it is included or whether it is discretionary.
So gratuity is the money left for the service staff, recognizing their service.
And this is where the source provided a key detail. Service charges, a pre-calculated included gratuity, are often included for large parties.
Usually cited as 6 or more people.
And this is where the C2 diner has to be vigilant. You need to know how to read the fine print on the menu or the bill to see if this charge has already been added.
Right. If a service charge is included, it's mandatory. It covers the tip.
But for smaller tables, like the one in our roleplay example, the gratuity is typically discretionary.
And that means the patron decides the amount based on their satisfaction.
Understanding the difference between a mandatory included service charge and a discretionary tip is vital knowledge. You want to avoid either double tipping or, even worse, stiffing the server by accident.
The server in the roleplay provided excellent clarity on this.
They did. A 12% service charge is included for parties of 6 or more, but for a table of 1, it is discretionary. The patron confidently understands the term discretionary, that the decision rests with them.
It shows the patron understands the local service economy and the cultural nuances around tipping.
And finally, we need the language for handling the cost among friends or colleagues.
Splitting versus treating.
If you're treating a friend, taking on the full cost, the language should be generous and clear.
It's on me, or I've got this.
Yes. Those phrases signal your intention and usually stop the other person from even reaching for their wallet.
And if the costs are being shared.
The phrase is equally direct and efficient, asking to split the bill. In modern, sophisticated dining, this usually prompts the server to bring a mobile payment terminal that can divide the charge evenly or by specific amounts.
Clarity at this stage just prevents that most common form of end-of-meal awkwardness.
So that final financial negotiation requires mastering terminology check versus bill polite pacing when you have a moment, understanding conditional charges, discretionary versus included, and clear social intent treating versus splitting. It's the last chance to demonstrate your confidence and courtesy.
And that completes the full linguistic journey of the sophisticated diner from the host stand to the final receipt.
You made it.
We did. Now let's synthesize the key lessons. Let's focus on those pieces of advanced vocabulary and structure that really truly distinguish the master.
The initial goal was to move from just functional fluency to true mastery, and the roleplay examples we looked at gave us some excellent data points for this transition.
So let's review some of that advanced vocabulary that immediately signals an advanced speaker.
Okay. One of the first we noted was the use of peruse in the context of the menu.
Right. Can I get you started with something to drink while you peruse the menu?
To peruse means to examine something carefully, at length. It's a formal verb that suggests thoughtful consideration. It elevates the simple act of looking at the menu.
And the term we just covered, discretionary, in the context of the service charge.
Yes. Understanding that a charge is discretionary means you grasp the legal, social, and cultural context surrounding the transaction, not just the financial numbers. You're aware of the difference between expected norms and contractual obligations.
We also emphasized availability for walk-ins, succulent or exquisite for praise.
And the nuance of on the side and substitute for customization. These words are all definite markers.
But as the source material concluded, the markers of advanced fluency aren't just those individual words.
No, not at all. They are about the process, the confidence and the clarity with which you handle the unexpected and the specialized.
Exactly. The sophistication is really demonstrated in the execution of the full sequence.
For example, the need to explicitly verify hidden ingredients, like we discussed with the risotto stock, shows true mastery.
You're engaged and knowledgeable enough to ask a very specific, health-critical question.
And that proactive verification is key. It prevents errors, it demonstrates that the patron is engaged, knowledgeable, and capable of self-advocacy without ever being rude. It's a highly efficient and successful interaction.
And then there's the mastery we saw in the diplomatic complaint.
Using the conditional tense, would it be possible to soften what would otherwise be a demanding or confrontational interaction?
That's applied emotional intelligence, communicated through grammar.
It really is. And overall, I think our conversation confirmed a fundamental truth about language. Context matters.
Massively.
The register shifts so dramatically depending on the setting. A highly structured, formal restaurant demands the polished C2 level language we discussed.
Whereas a casual setting allows for much more informal, truncated phrases.
But the underlying principle is universal.
And what's that?
Politeness is universal, regardless of the setting. The sophisticated structures we talked about, the would it be possible, and asking for the bill when you have a moment, are fundamentally about respect and courtesy.
They ensure you get exactly what you want, whether it's a dietary need met or a perfectly prepared dish.
While respecting the operational complexity and the professionalism of the staff attending to you, that combination of confidence, clarity, and courtesy is the true definition of C2 mastery in the culinary world.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the advanced language of the sophisticated diner. Our primary goal today was to equip you with the confidence and the specific vocabulary needed for success.
I think we've established that while hospitality staff are often incredibly patient, using these precise, polite structures is really the key to ensuring a smooth, enjoyable, and error-free experience.
Absolutely. And before we conclude, let's leave you with a final thought, an extension question that builds on the cultural implications of everything we've discussed.
We learned that advanced fluency requires navigating these nuanced expectations, from how you ask for water to whether a service charge is included or not.
And we found that these linguistic structures, they often reflect unspoken cultural values. When you avoid blunt commands and ask for the check when you have a moment, you're showing respect for the staff's time management.
You're avoiding the suggestion that they're merely your hurried servant.
So we want you to think about this. Beyond the linguistic structures, what other cultural signals do you notice change most drastically when you move from a casual establishment, say a local diner, to a highly sophisticated one?
Think about elements like the pace of service, the amount of physical space provided between tables, or even the volume of the ambient noise.
And how does the language we've discussed enforce that atmosphere? How do those unspoken cultural values manifest in the difference between a mandatory included service charge and a discretionary tip?
Ponder how the language reflects the perceived hierarchy and the value that's placed on the total dining experience, not just the food.
That is a fascinating question to consider as you apply this new knowledge.
So go forth, peruse menus with confidence, command your dining experience, and never again hesitate to ask for the sauce on the side.
We hope to see you back soon for another deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep refining your skills. Goodbye, everyone. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know the drill by now. We take your essential intelligence sources, memos, articles, proprietary research, all of it, and we turn them into the kind of focused, actionable knowledge you really need.
The kind you can use in those high-stakes environments.
Exactly. And today, we are moving way beyond the beginner level stuff, simply ordering your food or describing what you're eating.
Oh, yeah.
We are diving straight into the real test of professional poise, of social grace. We're talking about dining diplomacy.
I love that term for it.
We're calling this deep dive the diplomatic diner because we're focusing on those those unexpected moments of social friction.
That is the perfect framing for this. It really is, because we all get so caught up in the vocabulary for describing, say, a wine vintage or a complex recipe.
Oh, fancy stuff.
But the true demonstration of advanced language proficiency, I mean, that really top-tier C2 level of communication, it doesn't show up when things are going smoothly.
No, of course not.
It shows up when they derail. So this session is all about equipping you for those crucial social management skills. We want to teach you how to deploy language that is precise, that's diplomatic, and frankly, highly strategic.
Absolutely. Our mission today is laser-focused. We are synthesizing the core techniques from all our sources to give you the exact phrasing you need to manage those friction points professionally.
The exact words.
Exact words. We've organized this around 3 specific, very high-stakes areas. First, the polite, outcome-focused complaint.
Which is so hard to get right.
So hard. Second, the ironclad rules that govern a high-stakes business lunch. And third, the awkward but, completely unavoidable mathematics that come up when the bill finally lands on the table. The check, especially when it comes to splitting it and, of course, tipping.
And, the goal here isn't just about being polite for the sake of it. It's about being effective. We want you to be assertive, to make sure your needs, or more importantly, your client's needs, are met, but without ever falling into aggression. That little moment of friction is a true test of your professional composure.
And your vocabulary choices in that moment.
They determine everything. They determine whether you escalate the situation or whether you resolve it.
Okay, let's unpack this crucial first area then, the complaint. We have all faced this dilemma. I mean, you're trying to enjoy a meal, maybe you're with a client or an important colleague, and the food is just objectively wrong.
It's cold, it's undercooked.
Or it's just not what you ordered. And most people, as our sources point out, they just default to one of 2 counterproductive extremes.
Right.
Either you suffer an awkward silence, and just endure a bad meal.
Which is what most of us do, let's be honest.
Or you explode in frustration. So why is failure in this specific moment so professionally costly?
The cost is just enormous. It's enormous because your reaction, whatever it is immediately read by everyone at the table, and probably the tables nearby, as an indication of your overall emotional regulation.
Or competence.
Your professional competence, exactly.
Yeah.
If you sound like, and I'm quoting the source material here, a dissatisfied child, you are signaling a complete lack of control.
You're showing you can't seek objective solutions under even mild pressure.
And in a business context, that's fatal. Your ability to handle a lukewarm soup is, believe it or not, extrapolated to your ability to handle a lukewarm business deal.
Wow.
So the objective, therefore, must always be a solution, never a confrontation.
That distinction, solution versus confrontation, that feels like the core principle here. Aggression it's rooted in emotion, right?
It is. It's all about emotion. It demands an apology. It focuses on the wrong that was done to you.
Whereas assertiveness is purely outcome-focused. It's about clearly stating the result you want and giving the other person a clear path to get there.
And that path, this is the key, that path is paved with what the sources identify as mitigating language.
Mitigating language.
But think of it as a linguistic cushion. It's language specifically designed to make the server, or whoever you're talking to, less defensive.
Ah, so you're managing their reaction.
You're making them less emotionally charged and therefore more receptive to actually acting on your request. Mitigating language essentially lowers the psychological temperature of the whole interaction before you even state the actual problem.
Okay. I understand the theory, but let me just challenge that for a second, because this is where it starts to feel a little counterintuitive to me.
Go on.
If I'm paying a significant amount of money for a service, and that service is flawed, why on earth should I, the consumer, start my request for a correction with an apology? Doesn't that go against the very idea of being assertive?
That is a highly intelligent question, and it's the right one to ask. The apology in this specific context is purely strategic. It's a tool. You are not apologizing for the existence of the error. That's not your fault. You're apologizing for the necessity of raising the issue at this particular time.
You're apologizing for the interruption.
Exactly. You're interrupting the flow of their work. Think of it as an investment in social capital. By saying something like, I'm terribly sorry to be a bother, or, excuse me, I apologize for the interruption, but you immediately signal that you respect their workload and their time.
And that respect makes them less likely to take the objective issue the cold soup personally.
Precisely. It frames the entire interaction as two professionals collaborating to fix a mutual problem. It's not a master scolding a servant, it's a collaboration.
That provides incredible strategic leverage, actually, when you put it like that. Okay, so we start with the apology. That's our mitigating language. What are some of the best, C2 level phrases for that first step?
Well, beyond the standard, "I'm sorry to be a bother," advanced speakers tend to use phrases that signal they acknowledge the complexity of the situation.
For example,
Things like, "I regret having to mention this, but there is a slight issue," or "My apologies for drawing your attention to this, but I wanted to address it promptly."
I like that. Drawing your attention to this.
Notice the framing, right? Drawing attention implies the issue already exists objectively. You're just performing the necessary administrative step of flagging it for them.
It's very detached, very professional. So once you've softened the ground with the apology, we move to component 2, the statement of fact.
And this is where objectivity is just paramount. You have to avoid emotional descriptors entirely.
So no, this is disgusting.
You're absolutely not. You shift from subjective commentary like, "This steak tastes awful," to objective, verifiable metrics. The real difference between a C1 level complaint and a C2 level complaint is the presence of evidence.
So you don't say the steak is burnt.
You say, "The steak, which was requested medium rare, appears to be well done." You see the difference. You're shifting the focus away from the kitchen's failure and onto the discrepancy between the expectation and the reality.
And that brings us to a piece of vocabulary the source is specifically identified as, well, fantastic in this context. The word discrepancy. Why is that word so highly valued here?
Discrepancy is just a stellar piece of C2 vocabulary because it belongs entirely to the professional analytical register. It doesn't carry emotional weight.
It's a business word.
It's a word you hear in finance or engineering or auditing. It implies a mismatch between two documented facts. So when you tell a server, "There seems to be a slight discrepancy with my order," you just remove all the emotional heat from the conversation.
You're not attacking their confidence.
Not at all. You're just pointing out a technical misalignment. It's almost like you're helping them with their quality control.
Let's run a quick comparison then to really show the power of this. So a C1 speaker gets the wrong side dish. They might say something like,
"Hey, I ordered the potatoes and you brought me fries. You got it wrong."
which is very accusatory. It puts them on the defensive immediately.
Immediately. Whereas the C2 speaker, having already apologized, would then state, "I apologize for the interruption, but I notice a slight discrepancy here. I believe I requested the roasted potatoes, but it appears these are the truffle fries."
The second phrasing is just. It's in a different league. It's professional, it's objective, and it immediately signals to the server that they're dealing with a rational, measured individual.
Which makes them far more inclined to just swiftly rectify the error. No drama needed.
That difference in response really does change the entire dynamic. Okay, so that brings us finally to component 3, the proposed solution.
And this is probably the most crucial part because it gives the service staff a clear, actionable instruction. It moves the interaction away from critique and into collaboration.
Right. You can't just state the problem and walk away.
Never. That just leaves the resolution process entirely up to the server, who is now pressured and stressed out.
Yeah.
You have to provide a clear path forward.
So if the dish is cold,
Would it be possible to have it gently reheated?
and if the dish is just plain wrong,
Could this be replaced with the roasted potatoes I requested? It eliminates all ambiguity. And this is where we see those high-level verbs get used, like rectify, which we'll definitely talk about more.
because it implies a professional correction, not just a fix.
That's it.
So the whole structure, it really acts as a kind of psychological negotiation. You offer respect with the apology,
You present undeniable evidence with the statement of fact or the discrepancy.
and then you offer them a simple way out with the proposed solution. It's incredibly strategic.
It is. It's social engineering at its most polite.
Let's transition now from managing a micro-crisis, a single flawed dish, to the macro diplomacy of it all. We're talking about managing the entire atmosphere and the power structure of a business lunch.
Yes. This is where your dining table skills are truly tested as really an extension of your business acumen.
We're moving from product issues to core relationship and power dynamics.
We are. And there is one non-negotiable, absolutely foundational rule that governs the entire financial and atmospheric transaction.
Rule number 1, which our sources say must be observed rigidly. The person who extends the invitation usually, no, always, foots the bill.
Always. And this needs to be understood as more than just good manners. This is ironclad protocol. To foot the bill means you, as the host, assume and maintain full financial responsibility for everything.
Everything.
Wine, appetizers, tips, the works. There should be absolutely no ambiguity about payment. None.
Okay, so what's the deep insight behind this? Why is it so rigid? I mean, what if a client insists on contributing? What are they trying to signal, and how does the host have to strategically reinforce their position?
It's a critical nonverbal signal of control and prioritization. When the host insists on paying, they are signaling two very important things to the client.
Okay.
First, that they are financially secure and completely in control of the situation. Second, that they are prioritizing the client's experience above any transactional cost.
So if the client reaches for the check?
Or even just suggests splitting it, the host must firmly, but of course politely, take charge. You need phrases ready like, please allow me, or this lunch is strictly on the firm, you're my guest today.
And to allow the client to pay would be seen as?
Ceding control. It suggests a lack of foresight on your part, or worse, a lack of generosity. It undermines your position.
Control and atmosphere management. Okay, essential. Now, let's talk about timing protocol, which is a common source of stress, especially for junior professionals. When exactly do we talk shop?
First, let's just make sure we're all on the same page with that idiom. To talk shop means discussing the specifics of the business at hand, right? The quarterly numbers, the contract details, the project timeline.
The actual work.
The actual work. And the rule on this is very firm. You generally do not talk shop until the main courses have been cleared, or at the absolute earliest, once the orders have been placed and the conversation has comfortably settled.
So you have this initial, sometimes quite extended period that's dedicated entirely to small talk, building rapport.
That's its only job.
But for a busy executive, that can feel really inefficient. What's the rationale? Why the mandated delay? Why prioritize rapport over business immediacy?
The rationale is pure relationship management. A business lunch is an investment in human chemistry. Rushing straight into the business proposal, the budget, the timeline, the deal points is seen as incredibly aggressive.
And desperate, maybe.
Desperate and purely transactional. It signals that you view the person across from you merely as a component in a transaction, not as a potential partner.
So the initial phase is all about establishing trust.
Finding common ground, allowing both parties to just relax. The sources are very clear on this. The best deals are often made not on the basis of a superior proposal, but on the basis of superior rapport.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You have to establish that human connection before you can really demand their intellectual focus. So once that rapport is established, how do you signal the strategic shift to the heavy stuff without it being, an awkward pivot?
That's where the right high-level idioms come into play. They act as a conversational signal. So once you've established that connection and the waiter has cleared the plates, you can smoothly transition.
How would that sound?
You might say something like, now that we've had a chance to connect on a few shared interests, I think we're prepared to get into the weeds on the project's projected ROI.
Get into the weeds. I like that. It's a sophisticated way of signaling, okay, we're moving from the broad overview to the complicated specific details now.
Exactly. It manages the recipient's expectations. It tells them prepare for analysis. It signals a move to granular detail. And it avoids that clumsy phrasing of, okay, let's stop talking about golf and get down to business now.
Much smoother. Now let's get to what might be the most culturally tricky area in modern dining, the alcohol question. Our sources identify this as a real high-wire act, particularly in US and UK business culture, where expectations are, well, they're changing rapidly.
It remains a true minefield. There's no doubt about it. The safest strategy, and the one that's recommended by diplomatic protocol, is to follow the client's lead. Exactly.
But why so strict? I mean, if the client orders sparkling water and I happen to enjoy a single glass of Pinot Noir with my meal, what's the real professional harm in that?
The expert analysis on this highlights that ordering anything significantly different from your guest creates an uncomfortable imbalance.
An imbalance.
Think about it. If the host orders a second glass of wine while the client is sticking to water, you create a cognitive discrepancy. Alcohol can affect judgment. It can shift the formality level of the conversation.
And critically, it can make the client feel either pressured to join you,
which is awful,
or that they're dealing with someone whose cognitive state is maybe less sharp than theirs.
And the host's primary role is to minimize friction and maintain absolute equality in the setting. Mirroring the client's choice is an essential form of respect.
So if they choose sobriety for the business lunch, the host has to follow suit.
Yeah.
You have to ensure both parties remain on the exact same cognitive and social footing.
Precisely. Any deviation just becomes a potential judgment point or a distraction, which is, at its core, a failure of atmosphere management.
This brings us perfectly to the analysis of that crisis management role play that was in the source material. The scenario was a high-stakes business lunch. The client's $80 Wagyu steak is delivered significantly overcooked, a major failure.
Maximum stress moment.
So how does the host successfully manage this dual crisis? You've got the poor food quality on one hand and the threat to the business atmosphere on the other.
The host's immediate, decisive action is the key lesson here. The client should never be the one to complain about their own food when the host is present. The host has to intercept that situation immediately.
It's another demonstration of their ability to handle complexity.
That's it, exactly.
Let's dissect the host's diplomatic language when they address the waiter, because the sources really highlighted this. I apologize for the interruption, but my associate's steak is significantly overcooked.
Yeah.
That one line is doing some very heavy diplomatic lifting.
It truly is. Let's break it down. First, the host starts with the apology, right? Providing that mitigating language we already talked about.
Check.
Second, they use significantly overcooked, which is objective and professional. It avoids emotional words like ruined or burnt.
Also check.
Third, and this is maybe the most important part, the host refers to the client as my associate. This is just brilliant.
Why is that so powerful?
It unifies the host and the client into a single professional unit. It frames the complaint not as some fussy individual's issue, but as a professional unit demanding a standard that was professionally documented, medium rare. It subtly elevates the stakes while maintaining total composure.
And then, when asking for the fix, the host uses that C2 level verb we mentioned earlier, rectify.
Yes. Rectify signals a demand for professional correction and error management. It's so much more commanding and precise than just saying, please fix this. It speaks to systems and standards.
So, by taking charge of the whole complaint, the host is actually demonstrating competence in crisis management.
They're showing the client that if a mistake happens in their future business dealings, the host will handle it swiftly and professionally, which in turn improves the client's perception of the host's overall reliability.
And the ultimate goal of all of this, of course, is to avoid what the source material called a sour note from ruining the entire lunch.
A sour note is such a beautiful way to describe it. That one small, unpleasant incident, the cold soup, the overcooked steak, the clumsy service, that threatens to derail or just spoil the positive memory of the whole event.
And the host's swift, decisive diplomatic action isolates that error.
It ensures the business goal and the rapport building remain paramount. It avoids the sour note entirely.
So we've successfully navigated the complexities of the meal. The conversation is flowing. Now we face the final social hurdle. And this is particularly common in non-business or peer-to-peer settings where payment expectations can be ambiguous.
Managing the check.
It's a massive friction point, and we need precise language to handle it.
This is where so many friendships and, social poise can often stumble. When that bill arrives, the primary social default among peers in most modern Western cultures, certainly the US and the UK, is the Dutch treat.
Or going Dutch.
Same thing. It means everyone pays for their own share, which sounds simple.
But the tension arises in deciding how to execute that split. Do we just divide the total cost by 4? Or do we pull out our phones and receipts and figure out the exact cost of the one iced tea that somebody ordered?
That is the crucial question, and the diplomatic move is to be proactive. You propose the payment method first, and you use inclusive language that respects both financial accuracy and the social atmosphere.
So what's the key phrase?
The key diplomatic question, according to the sources, is, shall we split the bill evenly, or would you prefer to itemize?
Let's delve into the mechanics of that choice, because it's a big one. Splitting evenly is the default for maintaining a good atmosphere.
Right. It means you just divide the total cost, including tax and maybe the tip, by the number of people, regardless of minor differences in what everyone consumed. It's fast, it's easy.
And to itemize means?
To calculate exactly who consumed what. You ensure the person who had the expensive appetizer and 2 cocktails pays for them precisely, while the person who only had a side salad pays for just that.
We have to acknowledge that while itemizing is financially accurate, it is, as the sources say, socially heavy.
It is. It forces everyone into an accounting task right at the end of the evening. It slows everything down, and it can subtly signal a preoccupation with minor costs, which kind of detracts from the shared generosity of the whole experience.
It sounds like itemizing is the socially riskier option then. But when is it necessary? When does it move from just being tedious to being, well, morally mandated?
There are 3 clear scenarios where itemizing really should override the desire for social fluidity. First, and most obvious, is significant cost discrepancies.
Like when one person consumed 3 alcoholic beverages and everyone else had water.
Exactly. You can't ask them to subsidize your drinks. Second, if there are shared plates or expensive bottles of wine, it often requires itemizing to ensure fairness.
And the third one.
And this one is the most critical: the need for dietary or medical accuracy. If one person has severe allergies or specific dietary needs, maybe they brought their own specialized food or skipped major courses, itemizing is necessary.
To ensure they're not subsidizing consumption they couldn't even participate in.
Exactly. Respecting those health boundaries is far more important than saving 5 minutes by splitting the bill evenly.
That brings up another huge friction point that the sources must have addressed, especially in cross-cultural dining. Tipping etiquette.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, in the U.S., it's basically mandatory, and it's a significant percentage. Elsewhere, it might be included or completely optional. How does the diplomatic diner manage the tip when splitting a check?
This is crucial intelligence, particularly for international meetings. The diplomatic host needs to understand the local convention and take ownership of that part of the bill. In a U.S. context, the expectation for full service is what, 18 to 20%?
At least.
So when splitting the meal cost, the diplomatic approach is usually for one person, the host, to ensure the full tip is added before you calculate the individual splits.
Or for them just to cover the entire tip themselves if the split is really complex.
Yes. You never, ever want to leave the tip ambiguous because that reflects poorly on the entire group. Clarity and generosity around gratuity are just non-negotiable elements of dining diplomacy.
So if you offer the choice to itemize, and everyone agrees, the best practice is often for one person to handle the tip calculation centrally. Ensure a generous 20% is applied to the total, and then distribute the remaining food cost.
Precisely. It minimizes the friction, and it ensures the service staff who are not involved in your awkward math are still appropriately compensated for their work.
Now, let's just revisit the business exception for closure on this. We established that the host foots the bill, but how does the host handle that final moment where the client, just out of politeness, reaches for their wallet or tries to contribute?
The host has to be firm, decisive, and gracious in dismissing any such gesture. The final exchange has to reinforce the generosity and the power dynamic that was established at the very beginning of the meal. The language needs to be definitive. It has to eliminate any further discussion.
For instance, don't worry about that. The company's taking care of everything today. This lunch was our pleasure.
That's the perfect closure, and to add that extra bit of flair and sophistication, this is the moment to deploy that crucial idiom from the source material. This is what distinguishes you as a truly advanced communicator.
What's the phrase?
You use the phrase, "it's on the house," or rather, on the firm.
Okay, let's delve into that distinction because the critique highlighted this as a crucial, high-level nuance that needs robust expansion. What is the subtle but massive difference between on the house and on the firm?
It's the difference between a commercial gesture and a strategic investment. When something is on the house, it means the restaurant, the physical establishment, has absorbed the cost.
Right, like a free dessert because there was a mistake.
Exactly. It's typically used for something complimentary, an appetizer or a drink, usually offered because of an error or as a sign of appreciation from the management. It is a commercial gesture from the restaurant.
So it's the restaurant making a correction.
Precisely. But when the host says it's on the firm, they are defining the source of the financial investment as the company, the professional entity that the client is there to do business with.
Ah, I see.
It clearly signals that this meal is a strategic expenditure, it's an investment in the relationship, and it's a measure of the company's respect for the client. Using the correct idiom shows a deep understanding of professional context and financial sourcing.
It wraps up the whole transaction with professionalism and a clear statement of bounty.
And it reinforces the positive impression the host has worked so hard to establish for the entire meal.
That detailed analysis just underscores a fundamental truth about this entire deep dive. We're not just accumulating vocabulary here, we're accumulating tools for advanced social management. These idioms we've encountered function as high-value linguistic shortcuts.
They absolutely do. And instead of just listing them again, let's maybe look at how these phrases integrate into a sophisticated C2 level communication strategy, how they reinforce your image as a poised professional who can manage these complex social scenes.
Good idea. Let's start with the language of enthusiasm and connection. We heard the phrase "to die for" used as a compliment, specifically for the creme brulee in one of the examples.
This is so effective. If you just say the dessert is very good, it's transactional, it's polite, but it's flat. If you say it is to die for, it's engaging, it's enthusiastic, it's highly conversational.
It adds color and warmth.
Exactly. It helps build that crucial rapport during the final moments of the meal. It signals that you're fully present and you're appreciating the non-business elements of the interaction.
And then contrasting that warmth, we have the highly formal, almost detached language of correction. The word rectify.
Rectify is the ultimate C2 verb for error correction. It transforms a simple emotional request to fix something into a demand for professional accountability. It's the verb of a systems analyst, not an irritated customer.
So, by using it, can you please rectify this discrepancy? You're signaling that you expect errors to be handled systematically.
And professionally, which increases the weight of your request without you ever having to raise your voice.
For maintaining that crucial positive environment, especially in a business setting, the ability to even identify a potential sour note seems key.
Understanding the concept of the sour note implies situational awareness. It shows you have sensitivity to the broader atmosphere. A true professional avoids the sour note because they know that one small flaw, a clumsy moment, an overcooked steak, can disproportionately impact the overall memory of an otherwise successful interaction.
Using that phrase, even just internally to yourself, demonstrates a mastery of context.
It does.
And then when the conversation has to shift and it requires real intellectual focus, the idiom, get into the weeds, provides that necessary transition signal.
It's the linguistic equivalent of, putting on your reading glasses and tapping your pen on the table. It's concise, it's highly recognizable in professional circles, and it efficiently signals, okay, we are moving past the broad strokes and into the necessary complex detail.
It manages the pace of the discussion.
Perfectly.
And finally, the diplomatic vocabulary for financial responsibility. Foot the bill, and of course, that crucial distinction between on the house and on the firm.
These phrases are really the anchors of dining etiquette. If you are the one inviting, you must foot the bill. If you are closing a professional expenditure, you must explicitly define it as being on the firm. Mastering the nuanced application of these financial phrases just reinforces your authority, your generosity, and your command of professional context.
So it's clear. Advanced dining communication isn't just about vocabulary. It's about deploying language as a tool for managing the complex interplay of social dynamics, financial expectations, and your professional image.
You're mastering the context, not just the content. That's absolutely right. These phrases give you leverage. They're shortcuts to sounding informed, professional, and composed, even when the situation, be it a bad steak or an awkward check, is really testing your patience.
That brings us to the close of our deep dive into the diplomatic diner. We spent a lot of time analyzing the construction of the polite complaint, making sure we use mitigating language and that three-part structure apology, fact, solution to seek a fix, not a fight.
We covered the non-negotiables of business dining. The inviter must always foot the bill, the necessity of building rapport before you ever get into the weeds of the business.
And the critical need for balance when addressing that alcohol question, just to maintain equal footing.
And finally, we detailed the check diplomacy, offering that strategic choice between splitting evenly or itemizing, while ensuring the host always uses definitive language, like stating the expense is on the firm, to close a transaction generously and professionally.
So now for your challenge. We want you to connect this learning directly to your own professional and social life. Think back to a very specific time you were in a restaurant and the service was genuinely substandard.
Maybe a time you just stayed silent, or maybe a time you handled it with, a bit of frustration. We've all been there.
How would you handle that same scenario differently now? I want you to construct the opening sentence of your revised complaint. Would you introduce objective vocabulary like discrepancy? How quickly would you use a verb like rectify?
Think about how the structure of your sentence would shift, how it would become assertive without being aggressive, transforming a potentially emotional interaction into a purely administrative one.
And here's a final thought for you to mull over as you leave this deep dive. Since dining diplomacy is fundamentally about managing atmosphere, about maintaining a smooth, non-confrontational social flow, consider this scenario.
When is the only time it is acceptable for the diplomatic diner to intentionally sacrifice maximum politeness? That initial apology, the mitigation for speed and absolute clarity when dealing with a service issue.
That question forces you to critically apply these rules, prioritizing safety and immediate action over strict etiquette. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at mastering the diplomatic friction points of dining.
Master the moment, manage the atmosphere, and until next time, cheers. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're joining us, you're likely already proficient in English, but today we are aiming a little higher.
A lot higher.
Yeah, we are skipping the beginner lessons entirely to focus on, let's call it a C2 level vocabulary upgrade. We want to turn you from a diner into a critic.
That's really the mission, isn't it? We are executing a kind of linguistic shortcut for the advanced learner.
A shortcut, I like that.
We are moving, light years past describing food as just tasty or delicious, or that universally meaningless word, yummy.
Oh, Clea is not yummy.
Our goal here is to extract and really define the sophisticated language you need to discuss the art of dining. So that's everything from the precise mechanism of taste and texture to, the philosophical implications of modern culinary trends.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I mean, if you want to converse confidently with a chef or a sommelier or even just decode the intentionally complex prose of a high-end menu, you need precision. You need the vocabulary to describe why something is good, not just that it's good. So this deep dive is designed to transition your language skills from the logistics of, say, ordering a meal and paying a bill, to offering a profound, nuanced critique of the entire culinary experience.
And that transformation, from functional, operational English to critical, insightful English, that's truly what sets an advanced speaker apart in any field.
It really is.
It demonstrates not just fluency, but authority and, intellectual curiosity.
Absolutely. So let's jump straight into part one. The language of sensation. We have to first define the sensory experience with unparalleled accuracy, moving way beyond the simple 5 tastes.
Right.
The challenge really starts here in the kitchen of language. If I eat a raw lemon, it's just sour. Simple. But if I'm describing a meticulously crafted piece of seafood, maybe using citrus elements to cut through the richness of a buttery sauce, how do I describe that at an advanced level? How do we elevate that basic flat concept of sourness into something, nuanced?
Okay, so we need to acknowledge that sour is really just the umbrella term for the detection of hydrogen ions. It's a chemical reaction.
Right.
When we move to advanced critique, we have to specify the quality and intensity of that sourness, and often its source. And this is why we break it down into tart, zesty, and acidic.
Okay, so let's start with tart. What is the subtle difference, emotionally and chemically, between something that's just sour and something that's tart?
Tartness usually implies a sharp, clean sourness that is perceived as pleasantly stimulating. It's a quality that intentionally makes your mouth water.
Ah, okay.
Crucially, tartness is often used when the sourness is balanced by a strong presence of sweetness or fat. Think of a perfectly ripe raspberry or the filling of a good key lime pie. It's a desired counterpoint to richness. We use it when the sharpness is harmonizing, not, overpowering.
So if tartness is balanced, where does zesty fit in? Because zesty, to me, seems to carry a strong association with aroma.
It does, absolutely. Because zesty is highly specific. It relates almost exclusively to the volatile aromatic oils contained in the peel or the rind of citrus fruit.
So it's not the juice.
It's not the juice. If you describe a dish as zesty, you are emphasizing freshness, lightness, and brightness specifically from those oils. Its flavor married irrevocably to aroma. You can have a highly acidic glass of lemonade that isn't zesty at all if the juice was, say, bottled. But if you finally grate the rind of an orange over a piece of grilled fish, that powerful, fresh, aromatic lift is the definition of zestiness.
That distinction, zestiness, as the aromatic oil versus acidity as the chemical structure, that is a massive leap in descriptive power.
It is. And then, of course, we have acidic. While all citrus contains acid, we use acidic particularly when describing sharp, sometimes biting flavors derived from high acidity.
Especially in things like wine.
Exactly. Especially in structurally complex items like certain wines, or robust vinegar-based sauces like some traditional French reductions. Unlike tart, which suggests balance, acidic can sometimes carry a neutral or even slightly negative connotation if the acidity is unbalanced.
So like too biting.
Yeah, suggesting it's too biting. But it's indispensable for discussing the fundamental structure of both food and drink. The acidity is what gives a dish lift.
Speaking of structure, let's Let's turn up the intensity. What terms do we use when a flavor is truly sharp, intense, or aggressively aromatic, something that hits you before it even touches your tongue?
That takes us into terminology that addresses both powerful flavor and olfactory sensation. If a flavor is truly aggressive, or if the aroma strikes you hard and just persists, we might call it pungent.
Pungent.
Pungent means intense and pervasive. I mean, think about walking into an artisanal key shop. That collective, powerful aroma of aged fermented milk is profoundly pungent.
Right, it hits you like a wall.
Exactly. This term is often used for strong aged cheeses, powerful herbs, or dishes dominated by raw garlic or onion. It signifies an intensity that is impossible to ignore, whether you find it pleasant or not.
And then there's a term that is entirely about the physical experience, which I think is often challenging for non-native speakers to grasp. Astringent. What is the actual sensation?
Right. Astringent describes a physical reaction rather than just a flavor profile. If you've ever, say, chewed on an unripened fruit or maybe drank a cup of black tea that was left to steep for 15 minutes, you know this feeling.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's the dry, almost painful sensation. It feels like your mouth is instantly dehydrated. Your cheeks are sucking inward.
That's the precise description. The dry, puckering sensation in the mouth, often felt on the gums and the tongue. Now, for the technical insight your advanced listeners need, this sensation is caused by tannins. Tannins are compounds that bind to the lubricant proteins, specifically mucins, in your saliva. So when those proteins are bound up and precipitated, your mouth literally loses its lubricity, creating that distinct feeling of dryness and surface tension.
So recognizing astringency is not just about taste. It's key to discussing the chemical structure, the tannins in red wine, dark chocolate, or specific fruits. It shows you really understand the physics of flavor.
Exactly. And now we can move to perhaps the single most important taste term in modern culinary discourse, umami.
Ah, yes.
No discussion of advanced taste is complete without a deep dive here.
Okay, so umami is the crucial fifth taste, recognized alongside sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. For years, I feel like Western cuisine really struggled to find a single word for that deep, lingering, fundamental flavor that permeates so many slow-cooked and fermented dishes.
And the challenge for the learner is that umami is often mistakenly described simply as salty. We need to make a really sharp linguistic contrast here.
Okay, so let's clarify that distinction immediately. How does umami fundamentally differ from salty?
Saltiness, primarily driven by sodium chloride, is immediate, mineral, and sharp. It heightens all other flavors instantaneously. Umami, on the other hand, is the taste of the amino acid glutamate.
Okay.
It is a deep, savory flavor. It doesn't just hit the palate, it lingers. Salt is immediate and bright. Umami is slow and round.
That's a wonderful contrast. Immediate and bright versus slow and round.
Yeah.
So when critics say a dish is an umami bomb, what exactly are they trying to convey?
They are conveying a massive, concentrated depth of savory flavor that often coats the mouth and lasts well after swallowing. It results from high concentrations of glutamate, often achieved through processes like curing, aging, or fermentation. Classic examples would be aged Parmesan cheese, rich mushroom broths, intensely cured anchovies, slow-cooked bone stock, or fermented sauces like Worcestershire or soy sauce.
So if you use that phrase umami bomb, you instantly convey a massive complexity that could only be achieved through time and skilled preparation.
Precisely. And recognizing umami is essential for appreciating the complexity of dishes that rely on hours-long cooking processes. When you taste a rich Italian ragu that has simmered for 8 hours, or a traditional French onion soup where the broth is deeply caramelized, that profound depth, which goes way beyond just salty or meat flavor, that is umami at work.
So it signifies a successful technique.
It signifies successful cooking techniques designed to break down proteins and maximize that savory richness. It is the very foundation of complexity.
That rich, slow-cooked depth brings us really beautifully into the second core pillar of advanced critique, texture. Because texture often dictates the perceived quality of a dish even more than its flavor, and it demands specialized vocabulary.
Oh, absolutely. Texture is often the first thing that goes wrong in cooking, and it's the element that distinguishes an amateur preparation from a professional one.
Right.
Getting texture right is vital because the way a food physically interacts with your mouth, its sheer structure dictates whether or not you enjoy it.
Okay, so let's revisit the basics, but with an eye toward precision. Crispy versus crunchy. We often use them interchangeably, but I know critics do not.
No, they don't. The distinction lies in density and the sound produced. Crispy generally refers to a light, delicate fracture, like the skin on a perfect piece of roast duck or the edge of a delicate tempura batter. Usually it doesn't require much force to break and is often quiet.
Okay.
Crunchy, however, implies a denser, louder, more forceful breaking sensation. Think a raw carrot, peanuts, or a thick, rustic bread crust. Both can be desirable, but they represent entirely different structural properties.
Okay, now for the elevated terms for softer structures. If I'm eating a cream soup or a rich reduction, calling it just smooth feels, I don't know, inadequate.
It absolutely is. You call it velvety.
Velvety.
Velvety is a luxurious descriptor because it evokes the sense of touch and movement. It is used for smooth, rich textures that feel dense and luxurious as they coat the tongue and palate, particularly for high-quality sauces, gravies, or certain chocolate preparations. It implies a richness imparted by fat or starch that the word smooth completely lacks.
And on the other end of that spectrum, for baked goods or fish, what is the mark of delicate, skilled preparation?
The term is flaky. Flakiness is essential for describing perfect pastries, like croissants or puff pastry, where thin layers separate easily and delicately, signaling lightness in skilled folding or resting techniques.
Right.
And for fish, especially whitefish, if it's proofed perfectly, the muscle fibers separate easily into moist layers. It's flaky. If the fish or pastry holds together like one dense, solid mass, the opposite of flaky, it's probably overcooked or badly prepared.
Okay, so here's the conceptual wrapper for all of this, the expert-level term that I think truly separates the casual diner from the critic, mouthfeel.
Yes. Mouthfeel is the conceptual term for the entire physical sensation of the food or drink inside the mouth. It is the cumulative effect of temperature, density, moisture, fat content, carbonation, and even the speed at which the food melts or dissipates. It is the science of texture applying to the dining experience.
So why is this term so powerful? What does it do?
Because it allows you to discuss the structure and physical properties of the item independent of its flavor. When discussing beverages, especially wine, it is absolutely indispensable.
Right.
If a wine is described as having a heavy mouthfeel with strong tannins, you know immediately that you are dealing with a dense, substantial beverage that will likely contribute to astringency.
So if it has a heavy mouthfeel, that conveys body and density. What about something like a champagne?
A high-quality champagne would be described as having a clean, bright mouthfeel, driven by high acidity and fine, persistent bubbles. The feel of those bubbles, the effervescence, is a primary component of its mouthfeel. By using this single term, you demonstrate a holistic understanding of the sensory experience.
Moving on, there's one fantastic phrase that I think encapsulates the entire psychological and cultural journey from, say, initial revulsion to eventual enjoyment. And it is critical for navigating sophisticated, sometimes challenging dining experiences politely. And that phrase is an acquired taste.
This phrase is a masterpiece of linguistic sophistication. It truly is. It's a polite, advanced phrase used to describe foods that initially taste strange, unpleasant, or even terrible to an unfamiliar palate, but which, through repeated cultural exposure or, effortful exposure, become enjoyable over time.
So it's a way of acknowledging the intense initial reaction of revulsion, the pungency, the bitterness, the astringency, without dismissing the food's cultural or critical value.
Precisely. It acknowledges that taste is not merely a biological reflex, but a learned cultural experience. It shifts the discussion from the food being inherently bad to the taster needing time to adjust their palate, their expectations, and sometimes even their biochemistry. It's an exercise in humility and cultural maturity.
Can we look at the psychological mechanics here? Why do some tastes require acquisition? I mean, why do we have to work at it?
Often it comes down to overcoming evolutionary warning signals. Our bodies are just wired to reject intense bitterness, which could be poison, or extreme pungency, which could be decay.
Okay.
Blue cheese, for example, is pungent because of mold. Dark chocolate is intensely bitter. In order to enjoy these things, you have to learn to override that initial signal and appreciate the complexity hidden beneath the intensity.
So what are the classic examples that fall into this category that we should be prepared to discuss?
Well, beyond the ones we mentioned, blue cheese with its pungency and mold flavors, dark chocolate with its bitterness, and straight, unsweetened espresso for its intensity and bitterness, we can include things like single malt scotch, where the smoky, peaty elements are often overwhelming at first.
Definitely an acquired taste.
Oh yeah. or very specific cured or fermented fish dishes from Nordic or Asian traditions, where the intensity of the salt and fermentation needs acclimatization.
So using acquired taste shows that you understand the cultural weight and the steep learning curve some flavor profiles require, and it marks you as a linguistically and gastronomically sophisticated individual.
Exactly.
So now we transition from the food on the plate to the vocabulary that frames the food, the modern menu terminology that tells a story about sourcing, ethics, and culinary philosophy.
This knowledge is mandatory today. A high-end menu is not just a list of ingredients, it's a mission statement. It demands knowledge of sustainability, provenance, where the food actually comes from, and the economics that underpin those choices.
Let's start with the most common sourcing term, locally sourced. It sounds simple, but what does it truly imply in the context of critical dining?
Locally sourced means ingredients are obtained from nearby producers, usually within a defined radius, say 100 or 200 miles. Beyond the obvious freshness benefit, when a restaurant stresses local sourcing, it is signaling a commitment to reduced environmental impact, a smaller carbon footprint, and support for the regional economy.
But there's a trade-off.
There is. It also implies reliance on seasonal limitations. If a menu is 100% locally sourced, you implicitly accept that tomatoes will only appear in summer, not in January, and that is a key factor in critique.
Okay, next we have artisanal. This term is now everywhere, from coffee to pasta. How do we distinguish genuine artisanal production from mere marketing hype?
Well, artisanal means products made in a traditional, manual, or non-mechanized way, often in small batches. The emphasis is on skill, tradition, and the human touch, rejecting industrial scale.
But this is where the skepticism comes in, right?
This is where skepticism is vital. An advanced critic has to question if the product truly reflects that tradition. Is the sourdough bread mixed and kneaded by hand over 3 days? Or is it a machine-made loaf with an artisanal label slapped on?
So when a menu uses artisanal, we are expected to understand that this translates to a higher cost due to lower production volume and higher skill required. But the payoff has to be demonstrably superior quality, a difference that justifies the astronomical price.
Precisely. The critique lies in determining if the quality is commensurate with the price tag implied by the artisanal label. If the process is slower and more demanding, the results should reflect that inherent quality and complexity of flavor.
And this ties directly into the third term, which has both a common and a specific culinary meaning, heirloom.
This is a crucial distinction. In general conversation, heirloom means inherited. In dining, it refers to a traditional variety of vegetable, fruit, or even animal breed that has not been hybridized or genetically modified for the demands of mass commercial agriculture.
So things like uniformity, high yield, and long shelf life.
Exactly. The supermarket tomato is engineered for logistics, while the heirloom tomato is cultivated solely for flavor depth, often at the expense of shelf life and appearance.
Right. They look weird, but they taste amazing.
Exactly. Heirloom varieties are often less disease-resistant and produce lower yields, which is why they were abandoned by industrial farming. But they preserve complex, original flavor profiles that the modern consumer might never encounter otherwise. When a chef sources heirloom produce, they are making an economic sacrifice, paying more for less yield in pursuit of flavor integrity and preserving biodiversity.
The critique here often centers on the economics then. Is the superior flavor of the heirloom tomato truly worth paying 3 times the price of the standard variety? Or is the perceived value partially tied to the inherent status of using a rare, non-industrial ingredient? That's the advanced question.
And that question forces us to move beyond simple description into philosophical critique, which is exactly where we want our listeners to operate.
Okay, let's shift from ingredients to methods and trends. The modern kitchen is a constant experiment, which leads directly to the phenomenon of fusion cuisine.
Fusion is inherently exciting and, unavoidable in a globalized world. It's the intentional mixing of culinary traditions, often across continents, to create entirely new dishes.
Right.
We see examples globally, from the initial California cuisine blending European and Asian influences decades ago, to modern examples like Korean BBQ tacos, or highly refined Japanese Peruvian, or Nikki cuisine.
So what defines successful fusion versus just a confused clashing of ingredients?
Successful fusion is a true synthesis. It takes the best techniques, ingredients, and flavor profiles from 2 or more traditions and blends them seamlessly, creating a dish that feels new but harmoniously balanced. For instance, successfully blending the deep umami of Korean ferments with the bright acidity of Mexican salsas.
And when it fails?
When it fails, it's a disaster. A gimmicky clash where two cuisines are simply forced together without understanding the underlying flavor architectures. The critic evaluates authenticity. Does this fusion feel respectful and complementary, or just forced and trendy?
This sets the perfect stage for the concept that generates the most critical skepticism in modern dining: the deconstructed dish.
Ah, deconstruction. The phrase that often makes people fear they're about to pay $50 for a single separated carrot. The initial, immediate skepticism is entirely justified.
But why the immediate eye-rolling? What's the fear?
Because the term is often abused. The fear is that the chef is merely separating familiar ingredients, serving raw pasta dough with a side of cold diced tomatoes, and calling it art to justify a massive markup. It sounds like pretension cloaked in minimalist plating.
But to be fair to the world-class chefs who actually pioneer this, there must be a deeper artistic meaning behind true deconstruction.
Oh, there is. The deeper meaning is that deconstruction is not about separating ingredients. It is about challenging the diner's memory and preconceived notions of a dish. It's an exercise in flavor architecture. The chef takes a familiar dish, say lasagna, and reimagines its essential components in new, sometimes volatile forms.
Can you provide a specific technical example of what this transformation involves? What sophisticated techniques are required to justify the deconstruction?
It often requires molecular gastronomy. So instead of a thick, slow-simmered cream sauce, you might have a foam of Parmesan, a light, airy suspension that captures the flavor without the density. Instead of a traditional sauce, you might encounter a gel or an element of spherification, where a liquid is encased in a thin membrane, allowing flavor to burst in the mouth unexpectedly. The pasta might not be traditionally layered. It might be presented as a single, perfectly crafted sheet, emphasizing the artisanal quality.
So the components aren't just on the plate. They are transformed in state and texture, focusing the diner entirely on the elemental flavors, the depth of the ragu, the airy lightness of the foam, without the structural distraction of the original casserole form.
Precisely. When done successfully, true deconstruction proves that the brilliance of the dish lies in its essential flavor profile, not in its historical form. And it forces the diner to use all the advanced sensory vocabulary we just covered. Otherwise, the experience is totally lost.
Okay, we have built the vocabulary foundation. Now let's put it into action. This segment uses a hypothetical case study discussing a trendy, expensive fictional spot called the Gilded Fork to identify and define the high-level phrases essential for offering sophisticated opinions in real time.
Let's do it.
So we've just been to the Gilded Fork. It was highly anticipated, the talk of the town, in fact. I, as the enthusiast, was blown away by the ambiance. How did the description in our scenario set the tone for the critique?
The description immediately signals a specific high-stakes aesthetic. The ambiance was described as impeccable, chic, and minimalist. That trifecta tells you everything.
Right.
Impeccable means flawlessly executed design. Chic signals high fashion and sophistication, and minimalist signals restrained, modern design, often focusing attention purely on the plate or the social dynamic.
That minimalist design choice is often where the skepticism begins, isn't it? Minimalist can easily translate to cold, stark, or overly reserved.
It can, yeah. The critique here is often aimed at the intent of the design. Does the minimalism genuinely draw attention to the food and conversation, or is it a sign of austerity, intended to feel exclusive and slightly intimidating? This high design setting immediately leads the skeptical critic to look for faults in value.
And the core skeptical critique hits several key linguistic markers concerning value. The first was about quantity. The portions were minuscule.
Minuscule is the perfect C2 substitute for very small. It immediately suggests insufficient quantity, especially relative to expectation and price. It implies the diner felt they received a starter portion for a main course price.
Which leads directly to the second point. The prices were astronomical.
Astronomical means extremely unreasonably high. It's an effective hyperbole. Now, a skeptical listener might interject here and say, doesn't using the term astronomical risk sounding like we're just complaining about money rather than critiquing value?
That's a fair challenge. The term has to be used judiciously.
It does. We use astronomical when the price appears disconnected from the perceived material cost of the ingredients and the labor, suggesting the diner is primarily paying for the ambience and the brand. It's a critique of perceived fairness.
And combining those 2 points minuscule portions and astronomical prices leads to the overarching fear that the skeptic expressed. The place might be merely style over substance.
And that is perhaps the single most devastating critique you can level against a trendy spot. It means the restaurant invested heavily in the aesthetic, the chic, minimalist decor, and the complex names, but failed to deliver quality, depth, or inherent value in the actual culinary product. It's a failure of execution hidden behind a facade.
But the enthusiast pushes back, shifting the focus away from quantity and perceived expense. And the rebuttal is crucial. It's not about stuffing yourself, it's about the flavor profile.
This is the critical pivot of the professional critic. They evaluate the complexity of flavor and the sophistication of technique, not just caloric intake. If the portions are minuscule, they must be justified by the sheer brilliance of the flavor profile, which brings us back to our concepts.
Which brings us back to the star dish we imagined, the deconstructed lasagna. The skeptic was right to be wary, but the successful execution demonstrated the deeper, successful meaning of deconstruction.
Exactly.
So let's break down the components mentioned again, specifically applying the advanced language.
So the components were highly refined. Sheets of house-made pasta, emphasizing the artisanal quality. A foam of Parmesan, which is the modernist element capturing the savory umami core.
Right.
And a ragu slow-cooked for 48 hours. That's the time-intensive flavor base.
That 48-hour ragu is the foundation that justifies the style. It delivers the ultimate desired payoff.
Absolutely. The result was described using our newly acquired vocabulary. The depth of flavor was incredible. The texture was velvety yet complex. It was intensely rich, savory, and undeniably an umami bomb.
Ah, the callback.
This is the ultimate proof that sophistication of language is necessary to match the sophistication of the dish. If you only have the word good, you can never convey the gravity of that 48-hour slow-cooked depth or the balance achieved.
We're moving past description here. We're analyzing the culinary investment. The investment of time, 48 hours, the investment in technique with the foam, and the investment in quality ingredients with the artisanal pasta.
That analysis of investment is what distinguishes the critique. The small portion size is justified because the preparation process itself is the true expensive component.
Okay. The dining experience is a trifecta of food, ambiance, and critically service. This is where linguistic nuance is paramount, as the difference between attentive and intrusive service can make or break a $300 meal.
Absolutely. The skeptic raised a fundamental concern that plagues high-end dining. If the staff is aloof, it ruins the experience.
So let's define aloof precisely in the context of service.
Aloof means cool, distant, superior, or consciously reserved. It implies the staff is present physically, but acts as if they are too sophisticated or disinterested to engage meaningfully with the diner. In hospitality, it is the fundamental failure to be welcoming. It signifies a bad cultural fit.
And on the opposite end, we have the waiter who is perhaps too enthusiastic or simply lacks situational awareness. The expert-level term for an irritating waiter is intrusive.
Right. Intrusive describes a waiter who interrupts conversation too frequently, hovers near the table waiting for a dish to be finished, or gets too involved in the diner's private moment. An advanced diner wants to feel cared for, but not watched.
So, the gold standard, the desired service, is defined by a fine balance. Attentive without being intrusive. They must be available when needed, but respectful of privacy and conversation. What does that look like in practical terms?
It looks like anticipation. It means clearing plate from the entire table simultaneously so no one is left eating alone. It means refilling water or wine before you even notice the glass is empty. It means reading body language to know if you are signaling for the check or if you are leaning into the conversation. It is a subtle choreography of disappearing and reappearing at precisely the right moment.
And finally, the sommelier detail. A great sommelier doesn't just recommend an expensive bottle. They are actively balancing the flavor profile of the meal through beverage pairings.
Exactly. The enthusiast noted that the sommelier paired a stunning Pinot Noir with the rich, umami-heavy main course, specifically to help cut through the richness of the meat.
That is a professional technical descriptor. What is the mechanism behind cutting through the richness? What does that actually mean?
It refers to using the structure of the wine, specifically its acidity or its lighter weight tannins, to cleanse the palate of the heavy fatty residue left by the rich food.
Okay, like a palate cleanser.
The acid in the wine acts like a palate cleanser between bites. It prevents the food from becoming overwhelmingly heavy or cloying, ensuring that the next bite tastes as fresh and nuanced as the first. It's a mark of true culinary and enological understanding. If the pairing fails to cut the richness, the whole dish feels heavy and unbalanced.
So let's conclude this segment by reviewing the high-value idioms that we saw embedded in that short critique dialogue. These are phrases that translate well outside of food critique and are essential for any advanced speaker to use in social or professional evaluation.
Absolutely. The first, and maybe most important for discussing trendy spots, is live up to the hype.
The word hype, meaning intense, sometimes exaggerated promotion or excitement built up around something, a new restaurant, a new tech product, a cultural event.
Right. If the experience is great, if the Gilded Fork delivers on its promise, it lives up to the hype. It meets or exceeds the extreme expectations created by the marketing or word of mouth.
And if it fails?
If it fails, you say it doesn't live up to the hype, or it was a massive letdown. It's a great way to immediately frame an entire experience, whether positive or negative.
Okay, number 2 is the structural critique we defined earlier, but it deserves emphasis. Style over substance.
This is a devastating critique because it is multi-layered. It confirms the suspicion that excessive effort and cost went into the superficial appearance, the chic and minimalist aesthetic, but the core quality, the substance, the flavor, the technique, is missing or lacking in depth.
You can use this anytime you see something that looks beautiful but feels fundamentally hollow or undeserving of the price tag.
Exactly. And finally, an easy classic idiom for anything that generates broad public interest, the talk of the town.
Right. This is used to describe something that everyone in a local area is currently discussing, excited about, or has a strong opinion on.
When the Gilded Fork is described as the talk of the town, it immediately establishes its cultural relevance and explains why the enthusiasm, and therefore the hype, exists in the first place.
It truly shows how far we've moved. I mean, we've gone from asking, was the food good, to using 3 distinct, complex idioms to evaluate the entire social, economic, and aesthetic context of the dining experience, all in one breath.
Yeah.
This has been a truly comprehensive journey. In one deep dive, we've executed a massive linguistic upgrade, moving from the simple act of ordering a meal to critiquing the depth of flavor and structural integrity of deconstructed artisanal cuisine.
And the importance of this shift cannot be overstated. I mean, you now possess the vocabulary to paint a vivid, detailed picture regarding texture, aroma, and flavor profile.
We defined the nuanced differences between tart, zesty, and acidic, understanding their role in balancing richness. We learned that mouthfeel is a complex combination of physical sensations, and we internalized that umami is the sophisticated payoff of slow, expert cooking derived from amino acids, utterly distinct from simple saltiness.
And we broke down the language of modern menus, learning that an heirloom tomato represents a value choice favoring flavor over yield, and that the best service is attentive without being intrusive. The goal is no longer just to communicate, but to communicate with sophistication, demonstrating how severely limited the word yummy truly is in any sophisticated context.
Indeed. Now, for our final, provocative, closing thought something for you, the advanced learner, to mull over as you encounter these sophisticated concepts in the world, particularly when fusion and high cost meet.
So, building on the idea of fusion cuisine, acquired tastes, and considering the astronomical prices we often associate with artisanal and heirloom ingredients.
Especially when they're paired with deconstructed plating and chic minimalist settings. We encourage you to consider this. If a chef uses modernist techniques to deconstruct a historically simple dish, such as lasagna or a classic pie, is the result truly an advancement of flavor architecture? Or is it, by prioritizing novelty and presentation over tradition, simply a sophisticated form of style over substance that is only justifiable by the status, the price tag itself, which has become its own acquired taste?
Think about that the next time you pay an astronomical price for a minuscule portion and whether the experience truly lived up to the hype.
Until next time, keep diving deep.